Hi, Shawna. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to do it.
Yeah, so I was told for my new values creation class to interview an entrepreneur, and I chose to interview you because you launched your own HR consulting business last year, and I've just been kind of curious about what the early phases of that process looked like. So this interview will be shared with my class. Many of them know you from when you taught us HR last semester, but for
Mhm.
those of you who don't, if you could just please take a moment to share a little bit about your background and then what kind of led you to start the consulting business last year?
Yeah. So I'm Shauna Potter, and my career has been spent in all different facets and forms of HR. So I've done HR on, a lot of different levels as far as more of a HR generalist or kind of specialist, HR business partner, up to VP of HR across a handful of different companies, small businesses up to really large corporations in different industries. So about a year ago, like exactly a year ago, I think it was June 2nd, was officially my first day in my consulting gig. But I decided to leave my corporate VP of HR role to start a consulting business. And it had been on my mind, on my radar for probably 8-ish years, as far as um, wanting to pursue that for what works for my family, specifically with my husband's job. And we have the potential to relocate. So trying to find something where I could continue to work, but it would allow us to have that freedom. And he has a pretty intense schedule too. So I wanted more flexibility than what I could find, I guess, in the corporate world. And I think I'm at the point in my career where I've got, over 15 years of experience across those different industries, and really liked the idea of, can I go into businesses and give them maybe a different perspective, specifically small businesses where maybe they don't have in-house HR, or if they do, it's like somebody who truly just processes payroll and gives people a paycheck, but they don't really know holistically about HR, and maybe the small business can't quite afford to have a full-time HR presence, but they really need that guidance, especially as they're scaling. Like, when is it appropriate to hire HR, or just getting some expertise in a real time capacity? That's often where I come in to help my clients to get that HR expertise. So, hopefully, that answers your question as far as a
Yeah,
little bit about my background and what led me into consulting.
it does. Thank you. And it kind of gives some light into how much experience you had and how you said for like 8 years you had it on your mind. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
my next question was there like an aha moment that made you realize there was a need for it in Boise, or was it more of an accumulation of all your experience and you wanted to start one? And kind of how did you know it was the right time?
Yeah, great question. So I think when the seed was planted for me by a friend of mine who was also a consultant, like I said, about 8 years ago, I was working at Idaho Power at the time, and I loved it. I was like, I don't want to leave. I love working here. I wanted to get more experience. Also, I think I was too young in my career at that point to, for me, as far as my what I wanted to have from a background and diversity of HR experiences, to feel like I could go out on my own and have that really in-depth background in a lot of different areas to be able to consult effectively for businesses to give a holistic HR experience. So I wanted to get more experience. And then I think maybe the aha moment, there were a couple things that happened. One, the last company that I worked for was a small business. And so I really got to see what it was like to work in a business where, I was me and one other person basically in HR for the whole company, and understand what it means for businesses that are kind of on that precipice of, like, they had decided to make the investment and hire HR in-house, but knowing their journey and when the tipping point was for them, and just seeing the opportunity for businesses that were, around the same size or kind of scaling at that same level, that needed HR expertise, but maybe weren't quite to the level of the company that I was at, where they did decide to hire in-house. So I gained an appreciation for what small businesses, the challenges that they have and what it's like when they're trying to make decisions to add headcount and bring things in house versus contract, out of house, if you will. So that was one of the aha moments, I guess. And then the other was really just more for me in my personal life, as far as, we have two, now three kids. And it just felt like, okay, I've got the experience that I wanted to get at those different levels. I feel like I have a really good holistic background. Seems like there's a need for small businesses to have, to provide HR consulting for them as they're, scaling. And I need something in my personal life that gives me just more autonomy over my schedule and what I need for my kids and our family. So the culmination of all those things led to, okay, I think it might be time to start. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting too because a lot of what we learn in this class is that when you're trying new ideas or you have things that maybe companies can implement but they don't know how, it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to ask, would you use this? People might say yes and then they won't. But to actually have the experience like in the boots on the ground and seeing
Yeah.
the need and understanding where you're adding value that you can add on your own without being actually like an HR person in the company, but having the need for that consulting business, I think is really a valuable way to get the insight that, oh, this is needed here and this is needed
Yep.
in small businesses. And I
Yeah.
guess that, yeah, totally. And that kind of leads into my next question too, which is before you actually launch your consulting business, did
Mhm.
you test the ideas in small ways? Like, did you work with maybe a few clients at first or gather feedback? And what might you have learned from doing that?
Yeah. I'm like laughing and smiling to myself because I think probably the more responsible way to launch your own business is to do what you're talking about, like test. And I think a lot of consultants do this. They keep their full-time gig and then they start taking on small clients, to for proof of concept. Like, could I do this? Do I want to do this? Can I actually generate real revenue by having clients with what I think I could offer? Um, I think for me, I mentioned a couple of friends who are consultants in not full HR, but more like specific sections of HR. So like leadership development and coaching and training is really where they have their niche, whereas mine is full scale, like you need help with including that, any component of HR, including leadership development. I can help with that. But they have seen a lot of success. And so I think that was okay. It can be done and it can be done here in Boise. And they even said, hey, we often have clients where we'll come in and do leadership development specifically, but then they ask us, like, hey, we have this compliance issue, or we have this benefits issue, or how do we implement a performance management system? And it's outside of their scope. And so they were saying, we have clients we could even send to you if it's more of the broader HR component. So anecdotally through them, I think there was that proof of concept, like, okay, I think this could work. And then I think, that helps. And then when I left and started my own consulting business, where I guess had some security in starting it, was when I left the company that I was with, I basically pitched like, hey, I'm going to leave my full-time role with you, but I would love to stay on as a consultant. And here's what that looks like. And I had put together a whole transition plan for, here's what I currently do in my role at the company. I can keep doing this subset of things that really I'm the only one qualified for within the organization. And it would just be at a, consultant contractor rate. And then, this subset of tasks could go to my team that was still there. And so I think having the roadmap for them to see that this could work, and you can still have HR presence, it's just will look a little bit different. And I'm still a part of that, but now it's in a consulting and contract capacity. So as I've learned over the last year, talking with folks who are either looking to start their own businesses or consulting gigs or have done it, one of the paths to do that is to have your current employer be a client of yours, to get that. You immediately have client, you have stability, you know the client versus like you're leaving your full-time corporate job, you don't have any clients yet, and you're kind of in this moment of panic. So maybe a slightly more unconventional way, but I'm learning that it's a plausible way to, have your current full-time employer potentially be your first client as you transition.
Yeah, and maybe not even unconventional. Like what I'm learning is that not many people who start startups or start a business do like all the testing and the iterating
Yeah.
and all the things I'm learning in this one specific book. But it's your story, and I think many others goes to show that yes, it could be cool to start small and iterate and like test ideas. But you can kind of do that with your employer that you're with,
Mm-hmm.
start that way. But also connections are so important and valuable.
Huge.
I think there's not only one way to start a business, and if you know it's going to be successful because of testimonials of the community or people who are already in the business and then your connections and knowing people, then you're going to get clients that way. So I think
Yep.
your story is showing me too that yes, what I'm learning in the class through this one book I'm thinking of specifically called The Lean Startup, which you might be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great way to start things and maybe a way that more companies should do, but it's not the only way. If you're one
Yeah.
person consulting, like I'm hearing relationships are really valuable and important and like your
Yes.
connections.
Yeah. I mean, that's how every client I have is through a connection. It's because a friend of a friend told them about me, or it is somebody I already know well and they want my services. So yeah, it is, you're absolutely right. Relationships and connections are huge.
Well, I'm not surprised because HR is a people
Yeah,
person industry. So you gotta
totally.
know, you gotta be that like that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was a great answer. I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, you bet.
My next question is, how have your clients influenced the ways that your services have evolved over time?
Yeah. So, um, when I went into this, I had, I guess, a few different buckets as far as like service offerings are concerned. So one of them was and still is leadership development, coaching, training. That's what I call, and I think I use this in the HR class I taught, the fun part of HR and kind of my passion area of HR. So that's one service offering that I have and still have. Um, the other was more like strategic HR. How can I help your company look more holistically at HR and see what direction you might need to head in to just level that up? And then the third is more like one-off projects. So if somebody needs to build out pay bands for all the positions within their company, or they need to draft a parental leave policy, I can come in and do that for them. Those are still my primary service offerings, but what I've really found to be something that it's probably like 70% of my clients that I'm offering to them is within that strategic HR bucket, coming into small businesses and doing basically an HR assessment or kind of an audit where I look at their entire company and anything related to HR will, go through. And then basically I kind of give them a report card. That sounds more maybe punitive than it is, but just like, hey, when you consider how what your culture looks like at your company, here's what I heard and I saw. Here are my recommendations for a path forward. It might just be like you're crushing it, keep doing what you're doing. It might be this is on fire, you need immediate help with this, like there's a compliance risk, or it might be it looks pretty good, but here are some ways that you can level up your leadership development training or your compensation philosophy. And in some instances, it's I I could do that for you, and then that leads to further business with that client. Or I am not the right person, like benefits. That's not my jam. I don't want to do it. So here are a handful of local benefit brokers that I know and trust that are great with small businesses that could help you level up your benefits packages or save money with your benefits offerings or things like that. So I had thought that that might be um, a way to kind of get in with clients and then potentially have future offerings. But it's ended up being a much larger part of my service offering and business that I have with clients than I initially anticipated, just learning what their pain points are and that they're like, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants with HR. We're like using Chat GPT and I don't know, we don't know if we're doing good things or bad things or where we're missing the mark. And that's where I can come and help them be more intentional and strategic with what direction they should head with HR.
I love that. Like you started working with clients and learned that they don't really even know where to start. That's why
Yeah.
they are seeking outside help. So
Yep.
you were able to kind of like change some things and say, I can go in and be an observer and outside
Mhm.
perspective and just like see where the pain points are. And it's really cool that you were able to find that need with all your clients and notice kind of a trend and then start to adapt your business style to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been cool. It's been really fun and interesting to learn and see where the need is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're kind of coming up on time, so I'm going to ask the very last question,
Yeah.
which was if someone like me wanted to start a consulting business in the future, what would you recommend focusing on early? And is there anything that you would have done differently if you started again?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, it's pretty easy to start a business. Like you can just, if you want to form an LLC, you literally just fill out a form online and pay some money, and then you have a business, which is crazy. Um, I would say finding mentors in the space who have started a business, and ideally in a similar industry. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but if you're trying to do something that's you're selling a product, probably find someone who's started a business selling a product. If you're offering a service, find somebody who started a business offering a service and really pick their brain about like, how did you do this? I think I kind of jumped into it and had people that I was asking along the way, but maybe could have more intentionally done it on the front end just because I'm still doing things now like I probably should have gotten QuickBooks way sooner so that I could do
Hmm.
all my invoicing through that versus kind of making an invoice on my own. And it's not the wrong way to do it. It's just could have been more efficient earlier on, or spending like a ton of time on building out a website and having certain things there that's not where I'm generating leads. It's all through connections, as I've talked about. So maybe investing less time there and more time in just spreading the word through my network. So I think if you can talk to people who have done it and ask like, what are all the things I need to know as I'm starting this? Everything from getting an accountant to any software that you found to be successful to um, you know resources that I should or shouldn't use. And then I think there's also starting to be a lot of resources, like programmatic resources for people who are looking to do this. One of my friends who is a consultant and has kind of been my mentor through my transition recently launched a corporate to consulting program. So for anybody who's looking to become a consultant specifically, she offers that. Her name is Abby Louie. So there's a plug for her to go look at her services. But there's also, different workshops and things that I've attended a year in that I wish I would have attended at the very beginning that walk you through just the nuts and bolts of starting a business that
Hmm.
I wish I would have done it earlier, I guess.
Yeah, great to know. Thank you so much. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have any questions for me or anything that you want to say before we log off?
No, just thanks for thinking of me and allowing me to share my story. And it's fun that you guys are looking into this across, um, your class. So
Yeah,
hopefully it was insightful.
it was. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too,
Bye,
Peyton.
Shauna.
Bye.
Thank you.